right. Done with public schools.
Yeah.
No, because he doesn't want me to.
No,
He gets mounted.
he does. All right, so we're, if everyone's okay, we're at bulkheads. You talked to me yesterday.
Hey, Bob.
No?
Another quick one for me too, because I'm brand new.
Yeah,
That's
no, I
bulkheads
asked.
thing.
Which one?
Bulkheads.
Yes.
The survey ended in the program ended in 2014 or no?
No.
I was told it was
Look
ended
at page
in
14. Look at page in that section. Yes. Page 4 outlines the work that's scheduled to be done this upcoming year. That's in this budget.
So
So
was the program renewed after
no,
2014?
the program has not renewed. The program has not finalized yet. Despite
It's
what
not
some,
finalized.
correct. Despite what you hear by some, it's not finalized. We're wrapping up some final areas, some final items, some things that were overlooked at some point somewhere down the 20-plus year program, actually 30-plus year program. 35-year program. So there's some things that have been missed, some things that need to be addressed. So this is coming to the end of it, but we're still in that process. And we talked about this just kind of along the same lines with the Budget and Finance Committee. One of the things that this board's going to have to wrestle with after we get through the budget, and just one of the things this year as it comes up, we're going to have to, in the next 2 years, come up with a plan for what the next process will be for bulkhead replacement, which means we'll have to start talking about probably a committee that can start working on it, either taking an advisory committee or creating an ad hoc committee that can start looking at the bulkheads, that can start looking at the information out there on the height of the bulkheads, that can look at different materials for replacement of bulkheads, because there's a lot of stuff going on out there. So we as an organization can make the determination when we begin the process again, what it should be. The other thing that you're going to have to take a strong look at is going to be the bulkhead differential. That keeps coming up. Is it fairly applied? Who's paying what and this and that? We know where it is, but there's differences of opinion on what should be moving forward. So there are things you all as a board are going to have to wrestle with over the next couple of years as this ends before the new begins.
So when exactly did the 35-year program?
36 years ago? Sound like right?
1982.
1982.
So the program has ended this year. Recommending to collect
That's 30.
$847,000.
2 more years.
34 years more.
Was there one more? I don't know.
That's 34 years. It's 82.
The
Yes.
concrete barriers. Yeah, there's some little ones for not the year we're about to prove. There's some concrete abutments and bulkheads that were never replaced that needs some attention, but they're not in this year's work. They're going to be in that'll be the final year. There's some components. They've held up great, so that but we need to get those as the final piece. So we've got the majority done here in this upcoming year that we're about to look for approval, and then just a small gap of items left for the next year, and then it will be finished.
Who are the payroll? When we say who is that?
Well, there's a portion to the Public Works Director. There's a portion
Public Works is domiciled. The upkeep of the bulkheads are domiciled Public Works.
Public Works oversees the bulkheads. Yeah.
See, I thought we contracted that out.
We do.
Okay.
Replacement.
Yeah.
But there's still
How about
work.
repair and stuff like that?
Still
We
work.
contract
do.
that out.
No, it depends on the level of work. Sometimes we do some spot work. Sometimes we do backfill. We'll go back and do some cleanup. I mean, there's a lot of things we get involved with. We don't just contract out and it's done. We assist with that process.
So, to Cheryl's point earlier, we're not double accounting here in any way, shape, or form as far as payroll expenses and
Absolutely
public works
not.
and payroll expenses here. Like sometimes you have well, 50% of his time is spent doing this function, 50% of his time is spent doing that function. So you split them up,
We
and
did
you
that.
put part of his salary in one place. And is that what we're seeing here?
I added
That's
them up,
what we
so
did.
it's sort of worked out. It adds up.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
All right.
So you're saying that the bulkheads you're doing 2,893 this year.
Actually, there is a
There's an
correction on that. It's 3,285. That was a misprint. You'll get a corrected page whenever we make corrections.
What page you got?
Yeah, that was on page 3.
Great.
Okay, and that's the end.
So we have one more, but small, won't be nearly as much as it after this.
That would be funded out of next year's budget.
18.
The next, not this budget cycle coming up, but the following year. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's the point in time where we have to look at exactly what point or how much further we have to go. Now, when you're talking about bulkhead differentials and fairness, again, my more concern is go through the end of this cycle. I mean, is there a gap from what we have next and where we've ended, in such that we don't have to collect that different that bulkhead amount, or maybe have to collect less.
A portion of it, yeah, and that's what we have to look at is condition. We'll have to evaluate the condition of the original bulkheads 36 years ago. Any other spot areas that we need, we have upkeep and those type of things. But there is a potential for a short-term, and I hate to even say this, the board could decide to stop collecting for a few years until we're ready to get back on site. Well, I think that's what you're asking, right? The board could. Yeah, the board could potentially do it if we don't have a plan moving forward. The board could delay collection of bulkhead reserves until a new plan's in. That is a potential, yes.
What I'm thinking is that's not something we really wanted problem. But on the other hand, if we're not ahead of this process in terms of having, it may pretty much force it.
Well, and that's why I'm bringing it up now.
The most desirable thing would be to, if we had a plan, to go ahead is to start the reduction this year and gradually and reduce it over the next few years. Got the plan, whatever the sustaining amount for charge is. Our plan. All right. I mean, right now we're going, oh, it's going to, okay, you've got a vacation year. You don't have to do anything like that. I'd rather see this.
Gradual.
Don't know what's going to
Well, now keep in mind, our plan, we're using the same funding strategy that we utilized over X number of years to complete the project. So if there's a change or deviation, that's a change in what's been regular plan up to this point. So we kept it, for budgetary purposes, we kept the same plan, knowing that when we reach the end, it's done. So we recycle, we figure out what our next step's going to be.
Yeah, I guess the point is, having a plan like that, I guess what I'm talking about is a true-up. I can't believe you have a 35-year plan collecting all the same money, and that you're going to, oops, we hit it right on the nose. Start the plan all over again. Yeah.
But we only collect for what. You understand the strategy is based on square foot price, where we are, what we're projected to do, so we collect for that. And then make the transfer for that work, right?
Okay, on an annual basis.
Yes, sir.
Well,
but you're right. In the next 2 years, we're going to have to, we've got to develop a new strategy moving forward, and it's going to impact the budget. However long gap or whatever it is. That's why I bring it up, that the board's going to be prepared. That's something we need to start.
well, what's going to be the approach to getting that, to truing up? And how are we going to do that?
Part of the discussion, Dave, I had with the Budget and Finance Committee a couple of years ago, not Budget and Finance, excuse me, Environmental Committee 2 years ago, was I hear that the bulkheads are going to have to be higher because of global warming and stuff, yet at the same time, the floodplain in Worcester County was just shrunk by thousands of square miles on the federal map. And I said to them at that point, I said, these two things don't line up for me. One tells me I got less floodplain, but you're telling me we got to have higher bulkheads. That's got to be, that process has to start not now, but it has to start this year to start putting that team together to answer those questions. It's not going to affect necessarily this budget, but it is going to affect what goes on, because if Bob says, you know, if in fact you can take a hiatus for a couple of years where you don't, what you did 36 years ago is still in great shape, that's not going to affect this budget, but it could affect the future. But don't get comfortable. You got to answer the question, because it isn't just if you have to, and I'm not saying we do, but if you have to raise the bulkhead by a foot, does that mean you now need more bulkhead than you needed before? Because obviously if it's got to go up a foot, you must have more land you need to take care of. You know, we're turning into Dutch with our fingers in the dike at some point. But it's not going to affect this necessarily.
Well, it's interesting because our problem with Worcester County is internal. It's inland, internal. The problem with the global warming is external from the sea.
Yes.
In other words, as the ice cap melts, our sea level raises, rises. But the internal water supply may not be going.
And again, this is where the discussions are going to be.
And the discussion also has to do with the seas aren't rising. The fact is that the coastal area is sinking.
Shrinking, yeah.
So
We can't answer that here.
from a budgetary
scientific problem.
From a budgetary understanding, next year we're probably going to have to get a group working on this. So the following year we can make some decisions. Continue, don't continue.
Just you're talking about next calendar year?
Yes, sir.
Are we going to expend money to do that?
Put a committee together?
Well,
Do we need any engineering money? I think
I don't think we need it.
do we need engineering?
that's why I was just asking.
That's what he said. We're 2 years out. I'm not sure we need engineering money this year or something. It would, you know, I think getting a committee together to look at all of the different components, figure out what sea level rise, height of the bulkhead, style of bulkhead, all that, and then the following year we'd probably need to expend some engineering money. I just don't know that we need to do it this year, because if we do it prematurely, then we're going to be spending more engineering money closer to when we actually do the work.
Well, there's kind of like two problems. It's the engineering that's needed to do the work, which is look at the condition of the existing bulkheads. And that will have to be done. Then the second thing is what we really want to do about the elevation, the height of the bulkheads.
And the type of bulkhead. You know, some of the issues we have before you put previous years, you could insert the bulkhead outside of the current structure and then backfill. Can't do that anymore. We're going to have to start a replacement strategy will be changing moving forward because of believe it or not, we're shrinking the canals and expanding people's yards. It has potential impacts. So what we have to start looking at is mitigating that impact as well. These are all conditions that need to be looked at.
Yeah, I don't know. My feeling is I'm not hard over on it, but
yeah,
spending some money this year to just
we could budget for it. I personally don't see a need for it based on, I knew this was going to come up. That's why I wanted to bring it up, that we need to pay attention to it. And for FYI, 1 year out.
Just to clarify something that Dave brought up, on page 4, you've got, the work to be done, forecast work, and estimated costs are of $739, et cetera. Do you do a true up to, see if you're within dollars or anything of that nature? Do you go through a validation process, see how much you spent?
It's generally pretty close because they're going with a wheel out there and measuring every single lot that's on the list, and so that to get the total footage, and the guy comes in and replaces it, it can't be off more than a very few feet.
It's trued up each year.
Yeah.
As I said earlier. It
Yeah.
is.
Okay. So there's not going to be much of a surplus in this budget after this program is completed.
No, sir.
Fire department is tomorrow. Police department.
Okay. Police department.
No.
Fire EMS, right?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Coming in
They're coming tomorrow.
Bring
They're,
it in.
they're coming.
Should we talk about it a little bit before they come in? Anybody have any concerns? Any points?
Wait till they get
That we would bring up with them.
No, we can bring it up, but I'll bring it up among ourselves. After we leave.
Significant increase.
Which,
Capital.
are we on the police department now?
Fire EMS.
Fire EMS. I wonder.
Yeah, 222,000. Yeah, we're up to 1,000.
Bob, I wasn't here last year. Will Fire EMS bring in some documentation with them?
They usually come and sit and answer.
Say again?
They typically come in and answer questions, just like we're doing here.
So we got to be prepared.
Do you know what the other is on the non-OPA revenue? That'd be 93 comes to 114.
Be interesting.
Is
Interesting.
that what it is? Interesting?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's I'm not sure where the significant increase, just out of curiosity, is
It's $22,000.
$22,000.
Increase was what now?
Trying to come.
Bring that up to par.
Yeah, right.
Police.
Police? Police.
All right. So,
Please, please.
the highlights in this area. There have been payroll increases. It's a culmination of, there are multiple things. First, let's talk about, there's an additional officer in the budget. I'll explain some. There are some promotions and merit increases are all part of where that total dollar amount's coming. Additional officer has been requested over the last 10 years. They haven't had, and it's actually longer than that, have not had an increase in their staff for sworn officers since 2000 and 2000 to present. 2000 they had 19 officers. 2005 through 2010 they had 20, and they're at 19 now. Calls have continued to increase annually, and the total number of, as an example, calls or the calls that we have are nearly 12,000 calls a year. Now, with that being said, the new officer position that they're requesting is an officer to participate in the CET program, and it's basically a county program. It's a investigative, narcotics investigative group. I don't know if you guys are probably following and seeing it in the news. The drug.
We were here too.
Yeah. So the drug problem, in particular the heroin problem, is an epidemic that just continues to increase in all areas of the country. Governor Hogan here in Maryland actually had a task force put together, and their findings are looking at how rapidly the increase in heroin overdoses and deaths. Our officers are dealing with that on a regular basis, and being the largest community in the county, we're seeing a large increase in that type of activity. So the request for the CET CT, to participate in the CT team, we actually would add an officer that would work with county task force for the drug interdiction. Some of the advantages to us are real-time information on drugs, some of the tracking purposes, some of just in time where they participate in all the drug activities throughout the county from our agency participating as a collective. Now, what that does mean from a flip side is being an officer in that program, we actually have the ability to recoup some of our costs through the forfeiture process. It's one of the things when you do a memorandum of understanding with the team that any participation with drug forfeiture for anything, whether it's cars or equipment or dollars, that goes into a fund and then that's distributed amongst the team members. Participants on the CT include MSP, Homeland Security, County Sheriff, two Ocean City officers, agencies, and we'd like to participate in one, being the largest year-round community.
Didn't he say, Bob, was it 5 in the county or 5 in Ocean Pines that died? Heroin overdose.
Ocean Pines.
It was 5 people died from heroin overdose in this county. This town last year. That's a lot.
No.
I have initial reservations against it. So I'm not sure that we as a community should pay a police officer to work outside the HOA. At least 95% of the time he's not going to be working in Ocean Pines, and we're supporting.
Well,
so we're paying for that officer to be on a task force. That the task force and the counties benefit, which we also have tax money through the county and state that we pay police outside our neighborhood. So, first of all, I really need to see the MOU. I need to have a lot of questions.
We don't have an MOU, crap.
You don't?
We do not.
Okay, well, I need to know how many officers are assigned to this total, what the forfeitures may or may not possibly be. I don't see super big seizures in this remote area. So I don't know how beneficial the forfeitures will be and how much we would get from it. So first of all, I would need more information myself to approve it, but my initial reaction is, why are we paying someone to work outside our homeowners association to help the county with their enforcement?
Okay.
That's my reservation.
Understood. Since we're the largest population, we're seeing a significant increase in activity in the Ocean Pines community. We just don't openly talk about it.
No, but the majority of majority of people who live here are 65 to 74 years old.
No, sir. Absolutely inaccurate information. That's not a fact.
That's not a fact?
No, sir.
All right, well, that was information given to us by LU.
That's absolutely factually inaccurate. They don't know the community. 35% of the community are over 65. I mean, 65% are under that age.
65% of the population
are
under 65 in Ocean.
Yes, sir. Yes. 2010 census.
Right out of the census.
Yes, sir.
The majority can hear.
Yeah.
I just don't see in this community. I really don't see a major problem.
Well,
yes, there is a problem all over.
Well,
yes, there's drug problems. There was a crack epidemic years ago. Harold back in the 70s. It's always going to happen. It comes, it goes, it gets big, it drops.
Well, let me give you some other stats.
I don't know how often they're going to be in Ocean Pines working. Is my problem compared to the county and the other surrounding areas.
Okay.
So they're going to go where the work is. How much work is it? Yes, we may have a slight problem in Ocean Pines, but there's more problem outside of Pines.
That's factual.
That's probably where they're going to be doing their
work. Won't the Ocean City people work over here too? Why not?
Excuse me?
Won't the Ocean City CET work over here? If we needed them?
Do. Yes.
Yeah.
When
It works both ways.
I know, but we also have our own police department to handle. We have our own
We
police
don't have
department.
an expertise of handling somebody who has a heroin overdose.
Okay. Here, now you all think you do. Can I give you stats before we start making? Everyone's quoting them. Couple facts. Okay. Let's start with the we'll get back to CET for a minute because I'll give you stats on that. As I started to say with the population, you also look at population per officer per population. So how many officers do you have against how many residents you have in community? Just numbers. Ocean City, their population is 7,173. They have 104 sworn officers. So 14.5 per 1,000. Now that's a little skewed because of,
Say that.
well, understood. I'm giving you all the stats.
Okay.
Snow Hill, population 2,409, 6 sworn personnel, 2.5 per 1,000. Pocomo, 4,098. That's their population. These are all right out of 2010 census, so I'm not making them up. They have 16 sworn officers, or 3.9 officers per 1,000. Berlin, 3,491 population. Sworn personnel, 14, or 4.0 per 1,000. Ocean Pines, 11,136. 15 sworn officers, or 1.3 per 1,000 residents. We are half at best.
The half the population Ocean Pines not work here full time.
No,
That's
No, 11,000.
we
Look
have,
at
we
That's
have
who lives
11. The number here says 11,136. 2010 census data actually says 11,700 is our year-round population.
But Bob, crime is not concentrated here. It's concentrated at Snow Hill.
Okay.
That's where the drug crime concentrated.
Okay.
And let me just give you, from my personal experience doing narcotics in Baltimore City, I've done forfeitures. I know what happens. You can be a big part of bust, you will. And by the time the feds get done with you, you'll get like next to nothing because they keep winnowing down what your percentage of participation was. It doesn't have to do with your body. They figure out what your real percentage of how effective you were in making all of this happen, such that by the time you get to the end, which takes a long time, you don't really get anything out of it.
Well, Ocean
So
City just
I
got,
would have a problem with justifying this person based on what you think you're going to collect out of forfeitures.
okay, more facts other than what we think. The MOU will thoroughly explain what the division in.
Yeah, we had one too. One too.
Again, I can't speak to Baltimore. They're a mess. Our county's not. So it's hard to.
It's not our county.
I'm saying
That's
that's
like Ted Cruz
It's
talking
not
about. Go to
our
New York.
county. It's by the time feds get done with
But it's
you.
not a Fed program. The CET. Okay, so you roll your eyes. Do you know anything about the county sheriff, the CET program?
I can tell you about drug forfeitures, and there is a process that has to go through. And the feds get. Listen,
I
you know
agree
the
with that.
feds want their fingers in
Oh.
everything.
Okay, I got you.
Right. That's exactly.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'll be reporting.
I'm going to give you 2 factors, okay?
Let Bob finish, if he may. Please.
We're seeing increased crime rates in Ocean Pines, regardless of what anybody says. We don't need it, this and that. I'm telling you, we've had 5 heroin deaths in this year, in 15. Okay, we had 10 near deaths, heroin overdoses. In 2 cases, okay, the officers administered the drug that basically brought the person back to life till the EMTs could get there and do their services. Naloxone, you officers might. What's that?
Naloxone.
Naloxone. So we are actively engrossed in. There's been an increase in Part 1 serious crimes related to drugs this year. In 2015, there's been a 40% increase that are drug related. Okay, so when you're saying it doesn't impact us, it directly impacts us. We track the stats. One of the things that Pat Supik said when she was here, the stats were pretty convincing, and that they appreciate the input on the police department, the stats, everything. I can back everything up I'm telling you, so it's easy.
You got to be careful with percentages. If you have 1 and the next year's 2, it's 1 up 50%. It's still only 2. Percentages is not numbers.
Well, how about 1.3 per 1,000? Is that an inaccurate? I mean, that's a good stat for officer, right? I mean,
If I may, Bob, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
How many businesses do we have in Ocean Ponds from?
I tell you what I'll do. How about if I invite?
We're a residential community. Snow Hill is not. Berlin is not. Ocean City is not. We, generally speaking, although we do have renters, they tend to be long-term renters. They're not renting by the week like that. We have no hotels. We have no transients to speak of in Ocean Ponds. I mean, even the transients that we do have on property come down weekends and so. I'm not saying there's no problem, but I also don't think we can compare ourselves to a municipality who has all of those things: businesses, hotels, transient population. So it's not a fair comparison, I think. And I do not. I think our statistics prove. I think in general we are a low, right now, as we exist, low crime area, and I would expect to be as a bedroom community.
Well, let me ask you, you say low crime area. We have 12,000 plus calls a year.
What are the calls?
They're calls.
Is it crime?
It's a mix of things. We are a community, so we have help dad up off the floor, check on mom. We haven't heard from her for 3 days. To Part 1 offenses. It's a host of things. So
Are they in and outside of
the majority
Ocean
of those,
Ponds?
the majority of those are in Ocean Ponds.
Inside Ocean?
And we do respond to businesses when called upon by the county sheriff's office for anything on Manquin Creek, anything out right on 589 there in front of us. So we are called on businesses around us as well. I'm probably going to defer. You all seem to disagree with the stats. How about I let the chief come in?
That'd be a good idea.
Because I didn't expect near this resistance from you all and intensity of concern. I thought this one was actually relatively easy, so I underestimated. This one's on me. How about if I invite the chief to come in tomorrow and share the stats more appropriately?
Could you ask him to the stats?
Absolutely.
Because the stats from 2013 to 2014 was a 40% crime decrease.
Correct.
Ocean Pond.
That is correct.
I'd like to know the
Part
trend
1
for
offenses.
2015.
The other thing, going back, you say we don't have an MO. Somebody has an MO. I mean, there must be a way that we can.
Why would we review it if we have no interest in it? I mean, I can get the Ocean City one. They
Because
just signed it, but
I would like, Bob, to know what is required of us if we agree
There's no
to go
deal.
forward with this. And you keep saying there is no MOU,
we don't.
but there is an MOU. Ocean City has one. Do they not?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How about I bring the chief out? I'm not going to argue play stuff with you guys or even try to. I'm confident that what's been presented is solid. We have not had an increase in officers in 15 years. We have the highest population in the county. You all say, well, we're safe because of our officers. When I know an officer's work at night, one person because we're short-staffed or because we've had the folks in working duty where they have to go downtown or they have to go to Snow Hill or process somebody. And we leave one person in, and especially in the height today, even today, I'm getting texts while we're in here about another bomb threat at the schools, which impacts our team. So it's easy to say we're safe. I'll let the chief come in and talk about it. I firmly believe part of the greatness of our community is how safe we are from our officers. The chief tells me he needs one more, and he'd like to apply to CET because of the drug impact here in our community. I tend to agree with that, but I'll let him come share his story with you all.
My concern, Bob, is that the individual serving on the task force works for the task force.
Correct.
He doesn't work for the chief. He doesn't work for the community. He works for the task force. And if there's a concentrated effort to investigate Berlin, just picking a name, I don't mean to pick
Sure.
on any,
Sure, wherever.
Newark,
Yeah,
Shamokin, wherever.
Yep.
We get no benefit out of that. We get no direct benefit out of that, other than the fact possibility that I don't know, somebody may travel down there and buy drugs or use drugs, or they may come into our community and sell drugs. I'm confused as to why we would hire somebody, lose control of their services, and kind of like donate it.
No, well, here's what I tell you. There's some facts that when you say that, the drugs don't stay they're not locked
I understand.
to,
Yeah.
okay, here's Ocean Pines, and here's what
Yeah.
they bleed off into using Berlin or Ocean City. Recent activities have brought across throughout the county certain drugs. Some of the deaths were related to a certain branding that actually ended up coming out of Philadelphia. And again, I don't want to get into a lot of details on some of this, but what it found, a lot of it was impacting our community directly and the folks that were involved in. So when you say being on the team doesn't have the impact, inaccurate from a couple areas. One, yes, they take direction from the county sheriff's office because they're the ones that
They're
have
the
the task,
police.
task force. However, the flip side of that coin is real-time immediate impact of the intel that we get, the real-time impact of being able to cross jurisdictions to interdict in this, with this drug crime issues. Interagency relationships are improved. They pay for everything but the officer's salary. So there are a lot of factors.
How about benefits, Bob?
Well, salary and benefits. We pay.
I mean, we pay salary and benefits.
There are
Okay.
employees.
I got to know. We're paying salary and
They
benefits.
cover all the other.
And with the opportunity to have some forfeiture, and to Cheryl's point, it does take, sometimes can take years before you get it, but those factors all, in addition to our stats, I think warrant this. Now, you all obviously have already thought about it, talked to some folks to get your stats. I will have to come and share, and then you all can just talk direct with him. Again, I feel a little bad. I underestimated this one, and it's my
I
fault.
wouldn't feel bad.
Well, no, because usually if I thought there was going to be this intensity about it, I'd have brought him in so he can talk direct. No, I didn't mean everybody. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I understand that they will provide vehicles and whatever.
Depending on your MOU, you have to negotiate what they provide.
They provide work space.
Will they provide working space? Yeah, so I'm not sure what
Like a
I
desk
mean,
and stuff.
a desk here?
That's here.
A desk somewhere, a desk and a computer. You need
Possibly.
computers.
I don't know. I can find that out.
Yeah,
That would be an important fact.
For where are you thinking on that? Because I'm guessing they would, but I don't want
The
to say.
thinking is we don't have the room. So,
We don't have, not so you're told we don't have the.
yeah.
Wow. How about, let me just, if I'd like to
so if
defer
we're going to
this,
hire
'cause
this new person,
No,
Yep.
it's frustrating. I feel like I'm digging uphill or something. That should be easy.
It's
okay.
I'm not talking about.
Being a non-criminal myself, no. Where would you think that most of the youth would go home, Snow Hill or Berlin or whatever, where are they going to go to get money? Where are the houses are going to break into? Down there, here? We got better houses, more expensive houses than any place else in town. If I was a kid that wanted drug money, or I lived in Berlin or Polk, any place else, got lots and lots of houses that are empty very often. And you can break in and steal a television set or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there's gotta
We
be
know
a lot
how
more
often that happens, Pat. We've
I
got
know,
all
that's what I want
record
the chief
Long
to come in and say.
record.
Yeah, look,
but it's dark.
Chief.
They can't find the house. It's too dark.
That's true, I
And,
understand.
Chief can come in tomorrow. One of the things that happened at the beginning of this conversation, I think it's important for us to recognize, is when somebody mentioned Ocean City, there was 7,000 people and 104 cops. Oh yeah, but they grow to how many thousands on weekends and stuff like that.
Hundreds.
We also
250,000.
double our population in the summertime. So, as I mentioned to the Budget and Finance Committee the other day during break, it's all well and good to use statistics of population out of a census, but half our members don't live here. They own homes here that need to be protected. So, if you want to start talking about population, we very often more than double the size of our population on the weekend or in the summertime. So you're talking about having about a 0.7 per thousand coverage for police, as opposed to 1.3. Okay, so again, it's iffy when you use just residents and census population here, because we grow dramatically on the weekends and in the summertime, and it isn't temporary. They're not staying in hotel rooms. They own these houses.
I can't get down my street yet.
Okay? So let's just keep in mind that we're not just protecting 11,000 people here.
Ocean City goes to a $500,000.
Of course it does.
To a $500,000.
It goes to 250. My point in that is that our population doubles.
And theirs
Okay?
goes up.
Well, so what? Snow Hills doesn't.
Goes up.
Well, we're sitting here at half. Look, the point is still valid. Snow Hill does not double in population, and they're twice the size as we are population for policemen. Okay?
Why
So
don't-
let's just make sure we know what we're talking about when we start talking about statistics and population levels and all that stuff. We're talking about houses that just because somebody isn't living in them, they are more at risk of being robbed than the houses that have people in them. Okay? So let's bring the chief in.
know what our
Yeah,
statistics are in
What about
break-ins.
local neighborhoods, communities like Riverfront, Glen Riddle? How many police officers to their population do they have?
I don't know. Depends on what they want to pay for.
I think zero.
They're part
Depends
of
on what they
Berlin.
want to pay for.
They're part of Berlin.
But here's what I can say. Tomorrow morning, 9:15 work, have the chief come in?
Sure.
That way, because everyone's going to just argue this one, I'd like to cover as much as I can and then bring the action, talk to you guys first.
Can you please ask him though to have a breakdown on these 12,000 calls per year? What's the nature of those?
That's good.
Well,
34 day.
Yeah, it is.
34 day.
34 day, that's right.
Will you give us a break before we go into that 9:15 right from here?
no, because we're going 9:15 to 10 o'clock to 11 back to back.
You
So.
got an attitude. You know that you got a bad attitude. Wait, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm playing.
Makes my hair hurt some days.
Yeah, this one's going to be.
Your hair
Next
does not
case.
need to be hurt.
I'm
He's
afraid
got
you
it.
are.
He's got it.
We haven't
He's
even
got it.
come close to any of the hard ones.
Oh, wait.
No, that's my point exactly.
Are we still on police?
Oh, yeah, we're not.
No,
Are we finished with the police?
no, finish.
No, we're not.
Why?
I want to know what we're buying for $75,000. I want to know about this.
I have no
this
comment.
building study. I want to know what this is all about.
No comment.
75,000. What do you mean, no comment? You can't do that. I'm a board member. You have to.
I can respectfully
Is he
deny
gay?
sharing information. Yes, sir.
What?
Yes, sir. Respectfully, I can.
Well, I think
The majority wants to move to Rex. Can't we go to Rex?
we can look at are going to look at capital expenditures later, and we are going to look at them in detail.
Yes.
And this can be deferred until we do that. I think.
Correct.
I'm glad you would. I
Thank you
thought
very much.
would.
Thank you.
Good.
Do I have a choice?
No.
Makes more sense we can argue about it. Makes more sense we can argue about it at one time.
Well, you want to see capital expenditures in
They
context.
overwhelm you with amount.
Okay.
Why not spend money?
Rec and Parks.
You're thinking like it's dangerous.
Revenue, and to Tom Carrick's point earlier, and I told you we had a couple programs that we had some revenue decrease, some of our sports camps and our classes. So that decreased our overall revenue by 15, and they just weren't working, so we got rid of those programming. If something doesn't work, we don't just keep it until it keep spending the money on it. But our programming at Rec and Parks is constantly evolving. Is the best way to explain it. We'll offer some programs if they're not working, change it, we'll do something else. So, we did see a decrease in revenue for that. Payroll, no significant changes in that area. We did break down this year something.
Repairs, as I said, repairs,
Total
lockdown,
payroll
that's
is projected 496, 432, even though the revenue decrease. Payroll expanded 20%, almost nearly. Well, no, maybe not 20%. 432 to 496, 497. Even though the revenue was down.
I'm
That's
sorry,
to
Tom.
me, that's a huge
I'm
increase in
sorry.
payroll.
Please.
Total
point-
payroll. Total payroll 460. Under expenses
Yes, sir.
432 to 496.
2015.
16, 15
Oh,
to
okay.
17.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to compare. Okay.
15 to 17.
I think that is it.
Well, our budget, yeah, but our,
Significant increase.
That's not a 1 year. That's a 2.
yeah, I was going to say the budget amount was 480. for last year.
We're in fiscal 16.
Yeah, what we're in. And the new one's 496, so it's 16,000.
Yes, but look at the revenue, 341, 23 for the revenue's gone down and payroll's gone up considerably. That's a trend.
And your forecast is 306 for this fiscal year.
Bob, if I may,
Yes, please.
one of the things that makes me go crazy over this one, I try and figure it out myself, but with the calculator, actually I didn't this time. But basically, when you're looking at the cost going up, payroll expenses, I mean, some of that payroll is going up for programs which are used and for which we're recovering money. That's a good thing I said.
That would be correct. Yes, no, I'm listening. I want to make sure I answer.
It's inaccurate. And it's difficult to tell what the real increase is, except by looking at the bottom line, which doesn't give a lot of insight. I'd like to know, I mean, you do show on page, 3, the
Free programming.
the free programming programs, and you could go back and say, okay, well, all of that amount, free programs, are in fact not recovered by any.
Well, we do have some revenue against them. Go to page 4. You did share that. Just to give a comparison, you see where we do have some revenue against the expense, the net result. And some of them, even though they're free, we might have a sponsorship, might have some family fun day. There's revenue estimated at $1,000, even though the expense is $4,000. So the net is -3. Yeah, we try to break it down a little further this year.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's a good thing. But I guess where I'd like to run is how much are we paying as an association for our recreation? This says we're paying $552,000, $553,000. I would like to be able to separate out the programs which are paying for themselves for the ones that we're paying $550,000. Does that make sense? What I'm asking for?
I just want to make sure I'm following you.
Well, it's a net of both
He's doing
together
the
now.
552 on page.
Yeah, no, I see his bottom line. But
Yeah.
what do you want netted out at?
Okay, what I'd like to know is how, that 552. That's cost plus assessment.
Yes,
cost.
agreed.
And I would like to know what we're paying that assessment dollar cost. And you can't really tell if I look at payroll, for an example. You say, well, 350 is going to payroll. Well, that's not true, because 350 out of that 500 isn't going to payroll, because some of that payroll is being paid for by fees, program fees. I mean, parks are clearly, something that we're paying for out of our assessment dollars. I would like to be able to separate how much out of this total budget we're paying. Let's see where the total expense, $876,000. How much of are we paying out of assessments, and for what? In other words, and you almost have it.
552.
I got that. I'm trying to understand the question. I'm sorry.
We have fee-based programs,
Yes.
which in fact are covering some of our expenses, payroll costs, so forth. I mean, some of those employees are, I believe, maybe I'm wrong. I believe those employees are running programs. that we're
That's
getting
correct.
income.
Yes.
Sure.
So some subset of this is being covered by those programs and the income we derive from league fees, the sports camps, and so forth. I want to know. Now, obviously, 552,000 is not being covered, and I want to know. I would like to be able to track what are we providing out of our assessments for the 552,000.
Would it be the
For the benefit of the
496,800?
members?
Is there-
Just
is there-
for the benefit of the members?
Just for the general benefit of
Okay.
the members. Yeah.
The general benefit of the members.
Yeah.
Page 3, I break it down a little bit.
Is it the
Certainly
496?
the free programs is a good, there's $31,000 there. The free programs are for the benefit of members, and we don't get anything back. So we're spending $31,000 of that $552,000 on those programs, concerts in the park and so forth.
Right.
Okay. Now, what I'm trying to figure out I'd like to figure out is what we're paying for the rest. If you look, and the main thing is in payroll expenses. What portion of payroll expenses are
Associated with each program?
well associated with those programs which are not fee, cannot collect fees set?
Well, there's 32,000 that aren't collecting fees, correct?
And that's true. You're
Right. So you just take 32 off of that, there's your number. Right?
I
mean,
You can do it that way.
I mean, that's a rough number. I mean, unless you're
if that's
trying
all, well, the problem is those are your free events, but that's not payroll. I mean, there's more than payroll.
The other part of this is you also have the administration of the community center, people sitting at desk, and there are people using meeting rooms and playing basketball and all kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
So is that person behind that desk being covered or not? I mean, I think I understand where your question is, but it becomes very, very hard to determine. You'd almost have to allocate a percentage of the salary of the person sitting the desk, and how much of that was paid for out of a profitable program.
I'm not trying to do that.
No, I'm just trying to. I think I get what you're trying to get at, but it's hard to do.
You have a summer camp, the program,
Right.
hire people to run the summer camp, and you collect fees for the summer camp,
Right.
and you have net costs for the summer camp, and all of those fee-based things. And basically, hopefully, it's a wash, or we make money out of some things, like the bus trips. We clearly make money on.
How about the best? People going in and out of basketball? How
Well,
do you
they're
allocate that?
I'm not trying to. I mean,
Okay,
that's
okay.
basically a recreational thing. And in other words, the person who's sitting at the desk at the community center while people go in and out and play basketball is part of the free thing that we offer the residents of Ocean Park. We're not collecting money for them. I just think we undersell ourselves in a way by saying that, by showing $552,000 expenses without being able to say what that specific is for, or to point out that, in fact, a lot of our expenses, not that part of that, but a lot of the total expense, which are $876,000, are paid for by fees, or offset by fees. Maybe that's the way to do it. I mean, maybe subtract 5.
And then what-
You have 308.
What do you do with that information?
Well, I mean, you answered the budget and finances question, which said that we're paying these programs are for the benefit of people outside the county or outside of Ocean Pines and so forth. We're collecting. Well, it's not really true because it only applies to the free programs. The other programs we're collecting money for. And that's the point I'm trying to get. It's not very well, obviously, so that's
What
okay.
does those base programs cost total? Those
Yeah.
those fee-based costs? What are
The-
separate?
yeah. Well, that's what you do. You separate the costs of the fee-based programs, and
Your answer.
I think the information is here. It's just not easy to see. And of course, take another thing and call it administrative costs, which is, and you've got things like repairs or maintenance and so on. But one of the things about this recreation program is obvious. The costs are going up every year. The net costs are going up every year. Net operating costs are up big time. I mean, going from 356 back in 2011 to 553 this year, that's a big drop. And the other thing that's huge is the 300,000, or is it 400,000, 400,000 capital? The request?
403.
403. So we're talking about $1 million for our recreation.
Tom,
And I didn't want
this
to
has been your pet.
Well, I think the capital issues, most of it is replacement reserve, so it's maintaining what we've already got. So there's only $23,000 worth new, which is G. So if the 403 is mostly replacement reserve dollars to replace things that need to be repaired or maintained. So that's an issue. I think, and I'm not trying to put words in Dave's mouth, but I think there is a value in telling the story better as to what it is our members are getting out of this. There's this argument that we're losing all that. First of all, it's not a profit center to begin with. Nor should it be viewed as a profit center. There is a concern. There is a concern. There's a theme here going on that the county is going to get something out of what we do, and it's come up 2 or 3 times today, which is a legitimate concern. But at the same time, you do live here, and we are part of the community and of the county. The other side of it, though, I think there's a lot of things that are provided to our members through this department, and it has grown at some level. And I think there becomes a point where you say, well, you've stopped some things, you've started others. At what point does the community say, hold it? How far and how high do we go? The delta between last year's actual forecast and next year's budget is, a relatively small amount of money considering the overall budget.
$60-some thousand.
It's 30,000.
Well, are you comparing 493 to 552?
First of all, that's 2015 budget, not 16.
I mean, isn't that what you said? Actuals? We don't know what 16.
The actual forecast is 521.
The only actual we have is 2015. We don't have the actual.
Well, we have a
The
forecast.
forecast is 521.
Oh, okay. You want to use forecast? Okay.
Yeah.
521.
We're at 521, so the increase is
But
30.
Tom, what's driving, and I agree with your thought process about people are concerned about, or they have this attitude that we're providing services to the county as a whole, and perhaps we should figure some way to recoup some of that expense. I understand you're correct in stating that may be point of view of some people, but I think there's something driving that. And the thing that I see driving it is that in 2011, we came from 356,000 net negative in total expenditures in order to meet the entertainment value or the recreational value of this community. And we have now grown it in that 6-year period to 553,000. So basically $200,000 over that period of time. And I think that's what's driving that. I don't think it has anything to do with the county's getting this for free and we should charge and stuff.
Well, that's what they said.
That's what
Can
they
I make
said.
an
I don't
observation
either.
here that I think two things. One of the things that you said earlier, Bob, in terms of our population, the age of our community now, we have younger people here now. younger people have children and want more programs, and there we have these camps and all of that sort of thing, and so that's a factor. So we want to be able to offer more to the younger portion of our community. And I think Sonia, when she made her presentation, made it pretty clear that we couldn't offer these programs without non-residents being part of it. And so that's going to be a factor. We say that's what we want to do as a community. And if our community is now younger, according to the statistics, then we're going to be providing these kinds of things.
Cheryl, let's be clear on something. The statistics would tell you that this community, and they're going to argue, is not getting younger. The reality is decision makers for a long time in this community had it in their head that we were a retirement community. I mean, even today, there are people who think 70% of our population is over 65 years old. What I think has been recognized since 2011 is exactly what you just said, is that we have a population that is not made up of primarily retired people. It is made up of people under 65. Many of them are working age. Many of them have children and or grandchildren who want to use these things. So I think that the salient comment you made that these folks want programs, they want services, and I think if I can build on Dave's comment, I think we could do a little better job of educating our membership on that fact and what are these programs that are now being offered that weren't offered back when we had $350,000 as opposed to that. And I think that was just a recognition that we are now not I'll go right to the vision statement. We are not just a resort community anymore. We are a community. We are, in fact, a city. We're not, so I mean,
Dirty word.
I know. We're not a municipality, but I think there's been a recognition from their boards coming forward since 2011 that we are more of a real, live community with school buses and all this stuff that goes with it, while the pure mathematics of the age of the community, which were affected not negatively, but just a fact, when you insert 500 some homes, all of which have to be over 55 years of age, 10 years ago, and they build out over that time, you are going to cause the age of the average population to go up. There's no argument there. You can't insert that without having that number changed. Putting that aside, I think there's been a recognition by the various boards over the years since then that we have a different community than we thought we had. So I think that's just my comment, that I think it's very telling what Cheryl said, that this group wants programs, and this is what we're paying for.
And we understand that the majority of that group are renters. We understand that. Right?
No.
These younger folks.
No, absolutely not.
Tom,
They have a very small rental population.
But Tom,
what we're trying to do, though, with the numbers are there. Numbers are there. How many of our residents use these programs because they sign up?
Yeah.
The numbers there. How many from outside the community use the programs because they sign up?
And they
What we would like to do
Yeah.
is not just say, well, we have a lot of young people, so this is why we really want to know. Numbers are there. All we want to see, provide the numbers. How many of our residents are using it? How many outside are using it in each program? If more people from outside the community are using
in
it,
the future, we track that. Right.
then we have to reevaluate.
I hear your point. I hear it.
the one thing that is true, I mean, you just look at this. You have an $80,000 increase from 11 to 17 staff, $80,000 increase in revenues, and a $200,000 increase in net operating costs. I mean, we're going kind of, and it's well, I don't know that
That's
it's
not necessarily the wrong direction
but,
at all.
but it's certainly enough to give pause to say, well, exactly when is this going to level over?
And that's why maybe we need to have this reexamination of cost differential between what we're charging people outside of our community.
That's what we're- And the other thing is how much should the average resident, how much do they want to pay? I guess if you have kids, you're willing to pay more. Don't go. You're not. Get them.
And a lot of this will be covered with the new software that we've been talking about that Sonia's been waiting for, a couple of years. She wants to do that, to know which program isn't, beneficial for them. But, I've been around 17 years. I get out every once in a while, drink beer, this and that.
Oh, you just hang around.
No,
You don't even do-
not
no,
much.
he doesn't.
Not much. No, I don't do.
He doesn't. You know.
Bunch of food. To this date, I've never had somebody say to me, "We offer too much stuff." I mean, maybe I'm just talking to the wrong people, but I've never heard anybody say we have too many programs.
I'll agree with that. I go 100%. They will say we're paying too much. Our assessments.
Well, right.
Here's the reason why.
And there's the reason why.
They say we pay too much assessments. It's 25%. So,
That's true.
Can I just bring up one other thing?
oh God, you again?
The liaison. I'm the liaison, correct?
Good for you.
And they were not happy that the restrooms at the White Horse Park not.
Well, that's because they're budgeted this year. So why would they be in next year?
They are not budgeted.
You should know that. They are.
Yes, they are.
Well,
Yeah.
There was direction to take those out by the board at last, and they never did take them out. I agree with that.
I don't.
The same thing as a
remember that.
$500,000
I think there's still
No,
police
no,
that's
station.
absolutely inaccurate, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what. When we get down to the reserve and reserve contributions,
Well,
and the capital
I'm
budget,
not trying to be mean about it. You're saying you want to fight at the reserves. I'm fine. I'm saying they were in budget. I'm not.
but the police station was not.
But the police station, the 500 is in there as well. Yes, sir.
500 was in the capital budget. I mean,
But-
And the 17 or the 145 for the
you disagreed that you were board direction was to take both of
absolutely
those items
disagree.
out.
The board said take it out.
Yeah.
I
but
did not.
if it's in the budget
Yes,
this year
yes,
and it's not in next year's budget,
correct.
that means you're going to do that this year.
With board approval.
That's right.
Yeah.
Gotta get board approved.
That's the same thing as our swimming pool. It's in this budget, but we thought.
Careful, you're treading on the carryover issue that I tried
Well,
to
that's
bring
exactly
up a long
why
time
I
ago.
brought it up.
Well,
I got
No,
killed for
that's
doing that.
exactly why I brought it up.
This-
Unless the board directs me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on that.
I'm quite sure. Well, it was supposed to be, but I was also quite sure that it
I think we're done. Start with tennis tomorrow.
Okay, we're all done with the
What's not dark yet?
boilerplate stuff. We're going to go on with these tomorrow. All right? Agree? Problem?
We need all this capital.
Call for adjournment. Do we need to have?
Yeah, let me ask you a question on timing. We got the chief coming in at 9:15. We got the. We're going to go through lunch. We're definitely going to have to.
Well, we're working.
We're going to have to get through that. Okay, just make sure we understand.
Bob's going to down as a cook up.
So we'll need-
I'll cook something.
See ya.
Can we get a bartender here for happy hour?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Do I hear move for adjournment?
You got it.
We'll finish up.
Second. Everybody in favor?
9 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you. Everybody say aye. Nobody. Y'all sit down.